The UAW is on strike, but fear not. Joe Biden is sending help. Now, while I have mixed feelings on Ronald Reagan, he did say this.
9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Now, while people are often elated to see the government intervene when it comes to disaster relief or ambulatory care, when it comes to Joe Biden helping when it comes to union negotiations, not so much. The first time Joe Biden sent help, if you want to call it that, was during the railroad strike. This is what Joe Biden says happened.
Mr. President, you have just averted a nationwide railroad strike that would have been crippling to the economy. How did you do that? And what were those last hours like in the negotiations?
Well, look, we brought business and labor together. One of the things that happens in negotiations, particularly if they've been elongated like these have, is people say and do things where their pride gets engaged as well. And it's awful hard to back off of some of these things. So what we did was just say, look, let's take a look. Let's take a look at what's happening. You have a good deal being made for labor. Their income's going to go up 24% over the next 5 years. They've worked out the health care piece. They worked out days off. They both sat down, in my view, and they were in the office today saying, well, we finally figured out this is fair on both sides.
But this is what workers say happened.
Ron Kalmanko, a locomotive engineer and organizer for Railroad Workers United, spoke to Democracy Now! Monday night.
So unfortunately, the most labor-friendly president, quote unquote, we've ever had, basically has opted to side with the Class 1 carriers, Class 1 rail carriers, because he had the opportunity, and he's had that opportunity since this whole debacle began, to basically urge, coax, cajole, and otherwise badger and bully the rail carriers into meeting what are very, very modest demands of rank and file railroad workers. And in his latest request here to Congress to legislate us basically back to work before we even had a chance to strike, under the terms and conditions of the tentative agreement, which is not very popular with the rank and file. We have unions that represent 55% of rail labor have voted this contract down. The rail industry has gouged their customers. They've shed themselves of about a third of their employees in the last 6 years. And they've basically pissed off just about everybody in the country except for their stockholders. And now we come down to the wire in contract negotiations where literally what separates the parties is a handful of sick time that most workers actually have achieved decades and decades ago, but railroad workers have traditionally gone without. And we finally have said enough is enough. We want a handful of sick days, and yet the rail carriers see fit to dig in their heels. These Fortune 500 companies who have made, like I say, record profits these last 25 years, and refuse to give us anything. And unfortunately, the Biden administration is incapable of siding unequivocally with us as the most labor-friendly president ever. We would have expected that from him. So there's a lot of upset and a lot of discontent right now amongst the working railroaders.
Yikes. And this is what Joe Biden did.
Congress stepped in, forcing the rail companies and workers into an agreement. Natalie Brand has the details from Washington.
With the deadline looming, President Biden signed into law a bill to prevent rail workers from going on strike next week.
I know this was a tough vote for members of both parties. It was tough for me, but it was the right thing to do at the moment, to save jobs, to protect millions of working families from harm and disruption, and to keep supply chains stable around the holidays.
The Senate overwhelmingly passed legislation late Thursday afternoon. It forced the unions to agree to the contract negotiated in September between the railroads, labor unions, and the Biden administration.
Working with business and labor to get this done and avoid this, what otherwise is a really good bill lacking only one thing. And we're going to get that one thing done before it's all over.
The agreement includes 24% raises over 5 years for workers, adds a personal day, and some bonus pay. But senators did not approve something which railroad labor unions have been fighting for: 7 days of paid sick leave.
They are one of the few industries in America today that have 0 sick paid leave.
So that's what Joe Biden did for the railway union. And when UPS went on strike, surely they asked for Joe's help, right? Wrong. According to Politico, when asked if the president could force a deal down the union's throat, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien said he asked the White House, Joe Biden's White House, multiple times not to get involved. O'Brien said, and I quote, "My neighborhood where I grew up in Boston, if two people had a disagreement and you had nothing to do with it, you just kept walking. We don't need anybody getting involved in this fight." Doesn't sound like an invitation to me. And what was the White House's reaction?
Thanks, Grant. Just one follow-up on UPS. The Teamsters president specifically urged the White House not to intervene in the case of a strike using the Taft-Hartley Act. Will the White House promise not to intervene if workers, in fact, do go on strike?
So, look, anytime we hear, there are these discussions, we want to ensure we're playing a constructive and productive role, right? That's how we kind of move forward here. As you just stated, the Teamsters have asked us to not get involved, to intervene, and hopefully the two sides can reach a mutual agreement and come to the table and do that collective bargaining that I was just talking about. We'll continue to be in touch with both parties constructively, support any efforts to reach a solution. But again, we are confident that both sides are going to come to an agreement, and continue to have a constructive presence as we continue to stay in touch.
Yeah, translation. We're gonna help, and there ain't nothing yous can do about it. Now the UAW is on strike, and Joe Biden is once again willing to help. So who did he send? Well, if who he sent is any indication of the type of help they'll be getting, they should run from that help as fast as they can. So who did Joe Biden send to help with negotiations? According to Politico again, yous guys are killing it. The White House sent Acting Secretary of Labor Julie Su and Senior Economic Advisor Gene Sperling. Now, who are these people? Now, Julie Su is a pretty boring choice. First-generation Chinese, father Taiwanese, born in Wisconsin, Stanford undergraduate, Harvard Law, became a nonprofit labor lawyer with a few high-profile cases, and eventually became Secretary of Labor for the state of California. Because of her actions as Secretary of Labor in California, she could not be confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Labor in Washington, D.C. That's why she's acting Secretary of Labor. But Gene Sperling is an entirely different story. Born in Michigan, went to the University of Minnesota for his undergraduate, then went to Yale Law School. Finally, he went to Wharton at UPenn for his MBA, after which he went to work in politics. He worked for Mario Cuomo as an economic advisor, which means if you work as an economic advisor in New York, as a New Yorker, I will tell you, that means you're working for Wall Street. He went on to work in the Clinton administration, where he did some real damage. No, serious damage to the entire American dream. Remember the financial crisis of 2008? Well, Gene Sperling, along with Larry Summers, Bob Rubin, and Tim Geithner, designed the Financial Modernization Act of 1999. This is the bill that allowed banks to become super banks by allowing investment banks to merge with mom and pop banks where everyday people kept their money, which gave them the money to supercharge speculation, and then removed protections, which 20 years later led directly to the 2008 financial crisis. Remember bringing China into the global economy, which led to the outsourcing of millions of American jobs? Well, that's Gene Sperling too. Now, his fingerprints aren't on NAFTA, but if NAFTA is the firstborn child, the Financial Modernization Act and normalizing relations with China are its brothers and sisters. I mean, this guy is a real, honest, 100% piece of work. And this is the guy who shipped American manufacturing jobs to China and who sowed the seeds by which millions of Americans lost their home. This is the guy who Biden sent to help the UAW. Man, with friends like Gene Sperling and Joe Biden, who needs enemies? No, really, who needs enemies? Hey, if you like this video, please hit that like button, please subscribe. Also press that notification button. I love answering questions from you. I love talking to you. So please let me know what you think. Take it easy. Peace.